In order with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10-4-10, and the regulations governing remote meetings, NJAC 539-15, I hereby announce that adequate notice and electronic notice of this meeting was provided in a notice dated January 19th, 2022, that was sent to the Asbury Park Press, Two River Times, posted on the bulletin board and on the main access door to Town Hall, filed in the clerk's office, and posted on the township's website.
Roll call.
It was Jason's.
Yeah, my mic's a little off, I guess. Okay.
Here.
Maybe try the one next to you.
Here.
Kirkle,
Here.
Campus, Dr. Lateef, Mr. Luciani,
Here.
Mr. Banatopoulos,
Here.
Mr. Perez, and Dr. Shaw.
Here.
We'll see Dr. Shaw for the absent Mr. Lateef for all matters on tonight's agenda. Please rise for a pledge of allegiance and stay standing for a moment of silence to honor police and military who've been wounded or killed in action. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a very full agenda for this evening, and we'll go ahead and start with item number 1. Jason?
Item number 1, KIP 20 LLC, proposed indoor recreational facility, preliminary final site plan number 2022-2, block 21, lots 4 and 4.01. 125, 127 Red Hill Road. Applicant seeks a use variance for an indoor recreational facility with improvements to include driveways, parking areas, landscaping, lighting, and stormwater management facilities.
So this is an application for completeness review. We did have one previously. I know our engineers have been working together, the applicant, with regard to questions that have been raised at the prior completeness hearing. Bob, would you summarize for where you and your staff are at with regard to the completeness on this application?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Subsequent to last zoning board meeting, and I don't recall the date off the top of my head, we have been asked by the board to meet with the applicant's engineer to go over some of the environmental issues associated with the site. We did so on August 4th. We came out of that meeting with fairly clear direction of what needed to happen next. We're in the process of making arrangements with the applicant's environmental consultant, to access the property. That's not yet been finalized, of course, but we've also looked at some documentation that the environmental consultant has submitted in the meantime, and are just waiting to hear how things proceed tonight.
Okay, because when you said the access was not a question of with regard to the KIP property itself, rather the adjacent property, because of concerns that there may be wetlands on that property which have buffers which may extend onto this property. So you're still working those issues at
Yes,
this
we're
point
working
in
out the
time.
details, and we're working on timing for the site visit.
So just for the board's clarification, I've spoken with both Bob and the applicant's counsel. So at this point, it was my recommendation to the board that we just, this is the one open issue, deem it complete for purposes of allowing them to proceed, subject to being at their risk, subject to the fact that they get on site prior to any hearing and it is different and then the applicant believes it to be, they will obviously revise their plans and resubmit them accordingly. But at this point, it seems to be being held up by an arrangement with the neighboring property, which really no one else has control over, and it's probably not fair to the applicant to continue to demand something that they can't control. So I think our professionals are in agreement with that. I know the applicant counsel, I believe, is in agreement with that. So it's my recommendation that we just, let the applicant move forward and deem them complete, again, subject to at their risk on that issue.
So what's anticipated is that you will be able to do an on-site with your experts, with the applicant's experts, potentially the neighbor's expert.
Yeah, the neighbor's controlling that, so it may.
Correct.
We believe it's going to be, they have an engineer now also, Bob, or his team will be there, and hopefully the applicant's professionals will be there as well. I mean, it's not going to be a board on site or anything like that. It's just going to be
Right.
the engineering
So-
professionals.
So that then when we get a report back from the professionals, hopefully they can all agree. And then even if they have not yet processed that through the DEP, which can take months, we'll at least believe that we have sound information to permit the hearing to, or the process to go forward.
Yes, Merrill Goncher, Sills, Cummins and Gross, representing the applicant. Just to reiterate, we understand that if there are circumstances, we don't believe that there are going to be, that it's a wetlands issue, frankly. There has been a presence-absence letter done on this property previously. We've submitted that from 2007. The DEP confirmed neither wetlands nor any buffers were located on my client's property. There were no transition buffers or other buffers or any wetlands. Our consultants have confirmed that by on-site inspection. And you're correct, we have applied for a new letter of interpretations. This is not a delineation, this is only to confirm the absence of wetlands, which has already been established, and the absence of buffers, which have already been established by DEP. Certainly, anybody can come and look at our property, that is not an issue.
Right.
And if your consultants want to confirm the absence of buffers on our site, that is not an issue. We did make an attempt to go on to the adjoining property. We don't believe that those are LOI issues, and that the issues they're raising are not, just to say, not wetlands LOI issues. Whatever the applicable regulations are, we will be bound by them, and to the extent that any developer prepares an application, we think we have 3 levels of protection already, because we have the old LOI, we've had the inspection, and we've had our confirmation of that. But if there are other DEP or governmental regulations that are applicable to my client's property, we are bound by them the same way anybody else would be, subject, of course, to there being relief or waivers that can be granted by DEP. We would comply with whatever those requirements are. Absolutely. That is our burden.
Enough. Yeah, I mean, one comment is that the previous LOI is 2007, and the DEP only gives them a 5-year life, so technically that is expired. But the other issue that came up with regard to some of the buffers, that I don't offhand know the answer, when did the 300-foot buffer come in? Was that before or after '07?
We believe it was before, right around 2003.
3, okay. Yeah, because that's a change that has impacted many properties. If the buffer is 100 foot versus 300 foot, can have a huge impact.
We absolutely agree, but that's why we are not relying exclusively on that. We've had someone go out there and make an independent, and we've
Good.
provided that documentation to you.
So, good. With all of that then, Bob, is it your recommendation that we deem this complete?
We would have no objection, Mr. Chairman, with the understanding that the applicant is indeed proceeding at their own risk.
Okay, Kate, do you have any concerns or issues with this?
Nothing from us on this. We have no objections.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, it's not open to the public, so.
Well, there was a reference made to the next door neighbor. I represent the Urbanski family.
I guess.
And there's an issue about whether or not we're going to let them on the property, which I'd like to explain to you, because they're trying to make us out to be bad guys, and we're not.
If I may, we're not making anyone out, but we would like this limited to the completeness issue, and whatever's going on the neighbor's property is, we believe,
And in fairness,
unrelated.
Nope. no one at this point has tried to make the neighbor out to be a bad person. It's just, it hasn't happened for whatever logistical reasons, and we're trying to make it work. And I think your client's actually cooperating to help make it happen, but
Yeah, she is.
it just hasn't happened yet, so we need to make the applicant move forward at some point. But if you want to,
I'd like to be heard, yes. Just for the record, my name is Edward Liston. I'm an attorney from Toms River, New Jersey. I do a lot of land use work, both for applicants and objectors. I've represented boards my entire career. This is a situation where my client's property is not only next door, it's vast, it's very large. And the impact of, there's no property that's going to be more impacted than my client's property. So
I can stop you there, Ms. Barker.
if we can
Do you
object.
have any comments with regard to the completeness issue? But just
Yeah.
limit it to that. That's all we're here for. And we're not
Well-
taking testimony or comments on the application.
there was a request made through, I believe, the engineer for the board,
That's correct.
which my client referred to me, and she's been in touch with the engineer. She said, we need a formal request from the township, which can be done through you, through the board, and make arrangements to allow them on the property as long as we can go with them, and we can bring our expert. 'Cause
Absolutely.
We've requested it, and Bob's here. I think both of us are requesting that. We'll do it right now on the record. If you can authorize her to allow them to communicate through the engineers, that'd be perfect.
Fine,
Yeah.
yeah, that was, she thought it was a little unusual. She referred it to me.
Yeah.
And, so now council and I are aware of one another. We can
And
probably work it out.
Yeah, and you can, it's not the applicant, you can blame me. I mean, I was directing Bob to try to allow it to happen, and I think they just did whatever they did. And they got an email, I believe, from your client, so they just responded to it, so.
Yeah, but that was, when that email went out, she then copied me, and
That's
that's
fine.
when I got involved. It's about a week ago.
Perfect.
Sir?
Thank you.
All right, good, thanks, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. So do any board members have any questions on the request for deeming this complete and granting whatever waiver? There were some initial waivers, and we granted most of those previously.
Yes.
So the only question now is with regard to, for purposes of completeness, granting a waiver from the LOI requirement.
Yes, and with the understanding also that there's an FHA, a flood hazard area verification that goes along with that. Also a DEP issue.
But that is not, excuse me, if I may just, J9, which is what we were seeking a waiver from, your checklist, is an LOI. There is no other document. Any other document would be subject to, if an approval is granted, and we are going through the process, but that's the risk issue I think you're putting out there. That is not, as my understanding. There is no flood hazard document. Every item is very carefully spelled out in your checklist, and I don't think we should be held to a different standard. We've asked for the waiver from the one item you've identified, and I'm not sure that that anything else is part of
No
J9.
one suggested holding you up for a completeness for the flood hazard area. I think Bob's just pointing out that it's going to be an
Absolutely.
open item that's going to have to be addressed.
So that's really a separate question, that checklist may need to be updated to include the flood hazard.
A waiver, we're just holding the conditions in abeyance pending further.
No, they want to deem it complete.
Without having submitted it. So we're going to waive the submission of it, but subject to the fact it may be required as we proceed during the hearings based on site visits and anything else.
Yes.
Otherwise, it'll be conditioned on
We
approval.
frequently do. We're going to deem
Yes.
it complete, subject to further determination of those open two items at some subsequent point in the.
Yeah,
There's
and
one
or at the
item.
end of the hearing, if there's an approval, it would be conditioned, obviously, on flood hazard area permit and any other DEP or any other permit.
Any and all other outside
Well,
permits.
it's obviously not the flood zone, right? What's that?
No, but a flood hazard area determination would come into play with the C1 riparian buffer.
Yeah.
And riparian buffers are measured from the top of bank of the stream. So that's where it becomes a bit of a question. We did talk about that when we met with their engineer back in early August.
So there's flood hazard associated with streams, not just with the ocean.
Yes.
Right, well, any body of water, even a creek, can put
Yeah.
you in flood hazard zone, but,
But again, that's not a checklist item, and we understand county approval is another obligation that we have to get. And any other, I mean, if the county has jurisdiction, if DEP has jurisdiction, if
We got you.
the soil conservation people,
Our checklist.
Yes.
right, so I'm willing to make a motion to deem it complete, subject to further documentation that'll be required on those open items during.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Gerkel?
Yes.
Mr. Luciani?
Yes.
Mr. O'Banatopoulos?
Yes.
And Dr. Shaw?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah, I mean, as things evolve, just stay in touch with Loretta. She's the one that handles our agendas. And we're getting close to the end of the year and they're becoming increasingly full. Yeah. Okay, going on. Item 2.
470 Red Hill Road, Dementia Center, preliminary final site plan, number 2020-6, block 49.02, lots 40, 40Q, and 41 in the R40B zone. Applicant seeks a use variance to create an assisted living residence, which will be a facility for those suffering from dementia for 105 residents. The facility will consist of a state-of-the-art residential memory support program that will house a variety of innovative programs and building design concepts, including an assessment program, educational services, and extensive community outreach and support.
This is a continuing public hearing on this application. At our last hearing, we started the public comment, which followed the completion of the testimony of the applicant. We'll continue tonight with the public comment on this application. If you wish to comment, please raise your hand. We'll recognize you, come to the microphone, identify yourself with your name and address. We'll have to swear you in because this testimony must be done under oath. Please note, we ask you to be succinct and to the point. If someone had previously made similar comments, you can refer to that rather than repeating them. We'll start with people who were not previously recognized. Please note, we will continue, hopefully, for a finite period of time this evening, taking public comment. And after the public comment has been completed, we will continue the hearing to another date. The final summations of the attorneys, of the professionals, board discussion, and a vote will not be held this evening. Mr. Brown, do you have anything new to bring to the table, to the boards?
No, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for having us back.
Okay. Kate or Bob, do you have anything new at the moment?
Not for me, thank you.
No.
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, with consent of the board, we'll open it for public comment on the Dementia Center proposal.
Thank you. Is this on? Yes.
You have to speak closely to it.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Jane Zisk, 6 Lucarelli Drive.
Okay,
I'm-
we're going to swear you in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, I forgot. On February 15th, 7 months ago, I submitted a letter to the zoning board stating my concerns regarding Chair Blumenthal's impartiality in this use variance application. Concerns based upon what I witnessed at the November 6th walkthrough of the property. I was muted at the February 6th Zoom meeting, at the March 2nd Zoom meeting.
That's,
Did they just, it's public comment.
They can say
Yeah,
what they want,
so you
public
can say
comment.
what you want.
yeah.
May I continue? Thank you. At the March 2nd Zoom meeting, my letter was quickly read into the record, and Chair Blumenthal responded. He characterized my concern as a personal attack, declaring that a number of my statements were false and that, quote, there is no truth to them, unquote. Members of the public are repeatedly told in airports, train stations, and public gatherings, and even by our own police force, if you see something, say something. I am a concerned citizen who in good faith and for the greater good brought forth my observations and resultant concerns. just as I have been asked to do. I take tremendous offense at being labeled a liar. The chair's response focused on one specific sentence in my letter, characterizing it as, again, quote, the most egregious falsehood, end quote, in an attempt to discredit all other statements contained therein. This was a flawed strategy, particularly given that the sentence he railed against was not my assertion of fact, but a direct quote from someone who turned out to be his wife. On November 6th, I did hear and see Chair Blumenthal speaking and behaving as though the variance application was already approved, a done deal. The chair's wife did say to me, "Don't worry, you'll love it when it's done," and that's a quote. When, not if. Mrs. Blumenthal is still CLU's VP for Public Affairs, and there was no mention of this use various application on CLU's website until April 22nd, 2 months after my letter highlighted CLU's silence on the matter. I stand by my letter. It is unacceptable and, yes, egregious for anyone in a governing position to treat members of the public in such a manner. Doing so brings discredit and disgrace to the position and to the governing body itself. You may not like what a citizen is saying, and you may not agree with it, but no individual representing Holmdel's local government should ever attack a member of the public, silence a member of the public, or discourage residents from sharing their concerns, for it is, in fact, the residents of Holmdel whom you serve. The chair would do well to remember that. Moreover, regardless of anyone's bias, no one, absolutely no one, may dictate how members of the zoning board should vote. It is your duty to vote based upon the evidence presented. Mr. Brown tried to bring forth 2 expert witnesses, but the board denied them expert status. Mr. Asadi brought forth 2 witnesses who were unanimously accepted as experts, and they each gave compelling testimony. Please keep that in mind as you each deliberate and cast your own vote. Thank you.
Let me just respond briefly. I can't let it stand on the record. There were several statements in your original letter that were blatantly false. You quoted my wife as saying we both were members of the United Methodist Church. That statement is absolutely false. She didn't say it. And it's not true, period. Neither of us have ever been a member of the United Methodist Church. There is no evidence to support that. And bringing that kind of thing here is, to my mind, simply inappropriate. Next. In the back.
Hi, Danielle Curcio, 3 Williams Way. I have a couple of, oh, I'm sorry.
You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
First, when you guys go back to deliberate, I just hope that you remember week after week, meeting after meeting, all of us that are opposed, how we come out, take away from our families, as I know you do, sick kids, sick parents, and that. So when you make a decision, how passionate we are about this, that we take the time. I want to go back to the zoning board meeting of September 22nd. So it was discussed that patients, the care that the patients received here, that it wasn't assisted, it wasn't assisted living, it was a true dementia center. But however, as we've gone on and listened to testimony and everything, they say that in their current plan, there is no physical, medical, nursing accommodations for the patients in the advanced dementia stages. And that one person in a house of 7 patients could not be able to dispense medications, change soiled undergarments, the laundry. So they would be putting them in a non-ambulatory patients and dress and feed them and send them to another facility. So it's really more of an assisted living than a dementia center that they're saying that they are. And we already have 5 of them here. And the 6th one, Brightview, has been approved by the planning board as of February. The growing public preference here in New Jersey seems to be this at-home elder care, which Dr. Joelle Winters, she testified at July 20th meeting. and that dementia care centers always have empty beds. I don't believe that we need to destroy the open space for a facility to have empty beds. As at the June 29th meeting, Mr. Higgins, the UMC planner, when asked if any other locations in Holmdel were considered, he testified that Route 35, a 4-lane roadway with a 50-mile speed limit, was too loud for the dementia patients. But the Garden State Parkway is 10 lanes with 3 on and off ramps for Red Hill Road, and cars driving at 65 miles to 95 miles, which they shouldn't be, and that should be more. That seems to be far more disruptive. The other thing is, UMC has made numerous commitments during these hearings. The verbal commitments were a deed restriction stipulating that Country Woods would not be open, staggered times for the shift changes, restaurants and auditoriums not being used for the public, so it would increase the traffic, no parking on the grass, and maintaining these newly planted trees. When some will die, that they'll replace them. Who is going to monitor and enforce that this will be done? Is there going to be a penalty, or is it going to be the taxpayers, us, that are going to have to ultimately suffer for this? So finally, I ask you zoning board members, as a Holmdel resident, I am directly asking you, as my representative, to please vote no on the zoning variance. Thank you.
A brief comment, the process that we follow. After a decision is reached, our attorney writes up a resolution which formalizes that decision, and that resolution includes all of the conditions which were previously agreed to. The Holmdel Construction Office is the one that enforces those conditions in an ongoing fashion, regardless of what the nature of those conditions are. So there are mechanisms in place for ensuring that any agreed upon conditions are met. The conditions generally fall into 2 cases. One, those things that must be done prior to even receiving a construction permit, and those conditions which follow on, continuing with the life of the property. Next comment. Here. The hat.
Hello, my name is Stephen Growalski, 3 Country View Road.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Just spell your last name for me.
Grywalski.
Can you just refresh our recollection to where your house is?
Yeah, my house is on the corner of Galloping Hill and Country View Road. So right down the hill from, yeah.
You don't border the property.
I don't border it.
So you're 1 house away.
I'm not 1 house away.
Two?
3 houses away.
Okay.
So the corner of Country View Road, as you turn onto Country View Road. So I am here in support of the enclave. I am suggesting that the board approve the application. There's no longer an option to save the farm. The Potter family sold the property a couple years ago. And I'm concerned that if it's not approved, the current owner will then be forced to sell, and there's many examples all around of what could happen. So preservation to me is not a viable option. Not only do I believe that UMC will be good neighbors to all of Holmdel, they've shown themselves to be respectful to the neighbors who do border the property with the, and with the landscaping buffer and the look of what they have planned, in my opinion, fits in with the town. Single-story buildings. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. They've reaffirmed over in writing and as, specific items to the board as conditions of approval, as you stated. So lastly, on a personal note, my wife is a brain disease survivor. She's researched, written, been published, and has spoke extensively around the country and the world about brain diseases and those afflicted by these horrendous conditions. She's also the recipient of the 2022 Ambassador Award of the American Brain Foundation. There's a need for housing and care of these people with dementia throughout the world. We should be honored to call this groundbreaking, state-of-the-art community our neighbor. We believe that the Enclave is an inherently beneficial project and fully support its mission and innovative concept, providing residents the opportunity to live out their final years with dignity and pride in the town of Holmdel. This is something that our community should be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
My name is Bob Ugle, Heugle. I reside at 8 Bryce Road.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I can't bring the personal perspective that the prior speaker just brought, but I do have a couple comments in favor of this project that I hope the board will hear me. I've resided in Holmdel for 30 years. Bought my house here in 1992. I love this town. I find this town to be beautiful, and it has a lot going for it. I've been invested in the community. In the 90s, I had many years serving as the president of the Holmdel Pop Warner. I've been president of the Holmdel Booster. I've served on the Holmdel's Juvenile Conference Committee. I bring that to the attention of the board because, again, I love this town. I was alerted to this project a few months ago by Eric Silvergold. He didn't even know I was coming here tonight. I represented Eric's dad, sweetheart of a guy, Paul Silvergold, owned the print shop up in Aberdeen, represented his business for many, many years. They did wonderful works for my charity, a local Holmdel charity, the Francis Foundation for Kids Fighting Cancer. Eric gave me a call with respect to some issues, not about coming here tonight. Again, he didn't even know I was coming here tonight. But he alerted to me that this was going on. And when he told me that the applicant was the United Methodist Homes, I have represented United Methodist Homes. I'm an attorney, have represented them in construction litigation. That's what I kind of do a lot of. I'm sorry, United Methodist.
Communities, also United Methodist Homes in New Jersey.
Yes. I've represented them on construction litigation. One of their facilities, they hired a roofing contractor. He did a roofing job, and next thing we know, we got leaks going down all through the units. And so we were going after the roofing contractor to remedy those defective work. I came to know United Methodist, their leadership, the company, the people, and I can personally vouch with respect to how responsive they are, their character, reliability. If they come into this town, you're getting somebody that this town would want to be in this town. I know that from representing them. Sure, you can say I have a little bias. They're not my current client. I haven't represented them for years, but I got to know them over the years. And it's a good company. I want to mention that. I'm hoping that my daughter, who lives in Aberdeen, comes into my house next year. She has 3 young children. When I look at this project, and I don't mean to tell you that I know everything about it, all the nitty-gritty details, but as a Holmdel resident, looking at what comes before a board like this, what are the major issues, somebody that just may be hearing of it the first time, one of the first things that comes to my mind is schooling, the education of our kids. Are our classrooms going to be overcrowded? Number one is, I don't see and I don't know, and I think I'm right on this, that this project would not have the impact of bringing more kids into our schools, avoiding those overcrowding issues. As a parent, as a grandparent, we don't want crowded classrooms. We want the teachers to be able to focus on a manageable, reasonable number of students. I don't see this project bringing more students in. As a Holmdel resident, what do you normally hear? I would think you would normally hear, and I'm not a planning board attorney, zoning board attorney, or even a land use attorney. I have represented and done a lot of condemnation and eminent domain work, starting with the Attorney General's office many, many moons ago. But what's another concern? Traffic. I don't think that this project has any adverse impact on the township from a traffic perspective. Lighting, noise, I don't see, those are typically issues that you hear in not in my backyard arguments. I don't hear those issues in this particular application. And lastly, I'm echoing and trying to be as succinct as the chairman asked all speakers to be. And lastly is, I too, even though I don't have a house or property buffering this application or even in country woods, I too would be concerned, if not this project, what is going to come in there down the road? And you look at what this project's going to do, taking care of people with needs. And there is a need for this. If this application is denied, what is going to be before this board a year, 2 years, 4 years from now in terms of going under there, in terms of what are the uses that are permitted? Something that could be a heck of a lot more objectionable than the enclave. I'm sure I'm leaving some things out that I wanted to share with you, but as you can see that I care about our township. I want to bring my daughter and her kids into this township, and I thank you for your time and listening to my comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
What do you have?
Well, it was, no, okay.
Karen Strickland, 26 Hayward Hills Drive, living in Holmdel, New Jersey, but I'm speaking tonight as the co-president of Citizens for Informed Land Use, a community group that's been active in Holmdel for 23 years.
No, Bill Little made a statement on
Yes,
behalf of
but
CELU
at
last
the last
time. Is
zoning
that the
board
same?
public, yes.
Before
But
we do
may I-
anything, I swear you. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
At the last zoning board meeting,
Clear now.
at the last zoning board public meeting, it was noted that time for comments were limited. And so our person just summarized. And we understand that it's necessary to our comments to be read into the record in its entirety. That's why I gave you guys copies. What I handed there are copies for everybody of our comments, so you can use them in your consideration.
You're reading this into the record?
Yes, please.
Okay, I guess if there's time, but we
Can
can,
we avoid that by marking it and passing it around?
we could, if there's no objection from councils, we can just accept this and then you don't have to read it.
But we really spent a lot of time trying to work on this to get all the information there. And we're,
No, we haven't seen this before, right?
no, you have not seen it.
So,
Well, Bill,
We got a statement from CELU earlier.
Yeah, well, we advocated to deny it, but it was just like the high level. This has all the details in it. So to really explain, so we are urging you to deny the application because of the
so
implication.
Karen, so
Yeah.
if you're gonna read it, we don't need to pass it out, but if the council doesn't object, I would suggest we just mark it and pass it out. The board members will read it, you will have to give some to council, and then.
But if they're voting tonight, will they have time to read it?
Not voting tonight.
Marty, it's
So they'll
only a
have-
page and a half. She could read it.
Yeah,
Why
I
don't
don't
we
disagree
add-
with that, I'm just,
I think Karen should read it.
read it,
Put
right?
it in the record.
Okay, go ahead, just read it.
All right.
And if she's gonna read it, then the
We're not
document
passing
should
this
not be part of the
Oh,
record.
okay.
Yep.
We didn't understand the process,
That's fine.
but we knew that we had to get it into the record. So,
I'd like to hear it and also see the paper. I can't see the paper.
Well, it's not part of the evidence, so we're just comments now, so you're gonna read your statement.
I'm going to read it.
That's
It's
your
all,
testimony.
it's
I
all,
want to hear it. I want to hear it, read it to the record, and I'd like to see the piece of paper.
but it's also going to be video,
That's
so
right.
we can
You'll
watch the
get-
video.
You can reread it on the transcript.
Which is why I'm late, because my printer wasn't working. Anyway, I will read it to you. CELU is concerned about the long-term risks associated with an approval for the enclave development due to inconsistencies with Holmdel's master plan, non-compliance with Holmdel's existing zoning ordinances, negative impacts from increased impervious surfaces, massive movement of soil, and increased downstream flooding. The approval of a use variance tonight could establish a precedent for future use variances and the incentive to introduce sewers into a planning area 5, which is considered to be the most environmentally sensitive land by the state of New Jersey. For the following reasons, CELU urges the board to deny this zoning variance. First, The proposed enclave development will increase impervious surfaces and stormwater runoff, which will undoubtedly cause more severe flooding. This land is at the headwaters of the Wakeake-Mahora stream system, a system which already has contributed to continuous and increasing flooding in the Mill Road and Palmer Road areas of Holmdel. Current flooding downstream is already a crisis. As the owner of 280 Middle Road testified, the Wakeake-Mahora stream on his property is 10 feet wide and is totally clogged. His property is increasingly compromised by flooding. Holmdel has received similar flooding complaints from Palmer Square, the Orchards, and Fox Chase developments. Holmdel has recently allocated over $350,000 to study stormwater management throughout the town and will undoubtedly spend more to mitigate flooding downstream. It makes no sense for the board to approve a development that will exacerbate a problem that the town is spending a large amount of money to correct. Moreover, the impervious coverage proposed by the applicant is 21.94%, while the maximum allowed is only 15%. The applicant's analysis of proposed coverage does not include internal roadways as impervious. These areas are claimed as pervious because the applicant is using pervious pavers, but the pavers will eventually degrade with constant daily vehicle movements of laundry, food, and refuse to and from the buildings, and subsequently will become impervious areas, thereby making the 21.94% analysis incorrect. In addition, the development requires significant resculpting of the site. The resulting massive soil movement and compaction of the soil will impair the natural groundwater recharge and exacerbate stormwater runoff and flooding. This small version of a mountaintop removal of 22,000 cubic yards of cut and fill to level the top of the hill will rearrange a 12.6 acre area of disturbance of the total 18.55 acres, resculpting approximately 2/3 of the property. The new green DEP stormwater rules only require stormwater runoff to be decreased by 20% of the current farm runoff. That runoff is calculated according to New Jersey DEP rules using 1999 precipitation levels. According to a New Jersey DEP study, by 2020, New Jersey had already experienced 1/3 of the anticipated precipitation increase for the entire century. Though the development is designed to accommodate the remaining 80% of what is calculated to be currently running off the property, the design is not sufficient to handle all stormwater that will be generated with ever-increasing storms. While the applicant is not required to anticipate DEP's prediction of ever-increasing storms over the next 20 to 30 years, we all know they will happen. Climate change is inevitable. Last year, in a 24-hour period, Hurricane Ida dropped more than 9 inches on northern New Jersey, in some places at a rate of 2 to 3 inches per hour. Contrary to the new green stormwater regulations, the applicant's infiltration basins, rain gardens, are located at the edge of the site rather than distributed throughout the property every 2.5 acres. In a heavy storm event, CELU maintains that water will bypass the structural components of the stormwater system and run through designed and constructed spillways in sheet flow to Van Schoik culverts. This will dump the stormwater directly into Mahoris Brook, thereby causing flooding, eroding steep slopes, and depositing pollutants. Our second objection to the approval of the use variance is that the granting of a variance that is inconsistent with our master plan and zoning ordinances will set a precedent to disregard the standards to protect the environment. Every exemption of our zoning ordinances and master plan facilitates further land use degradation and negative consequences. Sewering in an unsewered area will set a precedent for future high-density development. What happened at Bell Works should be a reminder of what could happen in the future. The exemption granted to allow one sewer pipe to process Bell Labs clean room chemicals now supports 225 residences on land that was originally set aside as permanent open space to compensate for the intense use of the 6-story, 2 million square foot building. The R40B zone that applies to Potter's Farm was designed to handle single-family housing in an environmentally sensitive area. If these 18 acres were a cluster development of 7 single-family homes using septics with 15% maximum impervious coverage, as allowed now in the R40B zone, the wastewater produced would not be discharged to the Atlantic Ocean, but instead serve to recharge the groundwater. Note, the average 5,000 square foot footprint of each of the 15 proposed center buildings is more than twice the footprint of a large Holmdel home. The excessive footprint of the proposed enclave buildings and the concentrated impervious coverage will contribute to the loss of natural groundwater recharge and downstream flooding. While the financial feasibility of the applicant's project is not CELU's concern, if the project were to fail financially, which is certainly a possibility during times of economic uncertainty, Holmdel would be left with the sewered 18 acres at the intersection of exit 114 of the Garden State, which would accommodate potentially unlimited development. There is a reasonable expectation from neighbors that Holmdel zoning would be immutable. CELO maintains that the imperiled Waycake-Mahoris watershed must be protected with a vote that recognizes the environmental implications. Other sites exist in Holmdel that are more suitable for this development, which was originally designed for urban areas in the Netherlands. These other sites have services already zoned for this use, such as Route 35H zone, and would not require variances. In sum, CELO urges the zoning board to deny the current application in order to protect the imperiled Waycake-Mahoris watershed and adhere to the vision of Holmdel's master plan. Thank you for letting me say it.
Second, no, right. No rebuttal.
No rebuttal.
It's just comment. You
Yeah,
can do it in
comments.
summation.
No, just comments.
Here.
We're not gonna have
Next.
everyone.
Okay, next. Who's, yes?
Leslie Zimmerman, 3 Twin Brooks Court, Holmdel.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. The Township Committee Resolution 2021-23 and the Host Community Agreement passed on September 22nd, 21, which predated the application to the Zoning Board, had $0 collected from UMC, and our Holmdel residents would have helped to offset expenses with our Holmdel dollars. Although the board has no jurisdiction over taxes, you can't ignore any of the negative impact to our Holmdel residents. The EMT chief, a volunteer for 17 years, gave very compelling testimony detailing EMT's current call volume per assisted living projects. He cited current volumes at 12.5%, with Brightview 15%, and with UMC's a 20% call volume. Chief Tresetta stated that this is an undue burden on those who volunteer. Approving this variance creates the grounds for public safety-related lawsuits against Holmdel, like gross negligence and dereliction of duty. Per police protocol, every 911 is called, the police department is dispatched. If EMT call volumes increase, the police call volumes will so increase, impacting every resident. It is unacceptable and fiscally irresponsible and puts everyone in danger. Holmdel residents voted yes to raise taxes in support of open space, recreation and farmland historical preservation trust fund. How absurd to approve a zoning variance that not only defies our citizens' vote, but contradicts the 2020 master plan. The zoning board approving this application will allow a facility to be built that will always have empty beds, will increase traffic to evacuation routes, overburden our emergency services and police department, and will contradict the master plan and increase Holmdel residents' tax burden. A yes vote will forever profoundly destroy a beautiful corner of Holmdel. We urge the committee to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. In the pink or red in the back? Yep.
Hello, Angela Curcio, 3 Williams Way.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I stand before you once again to voice my concerns as a Holmdel resident for the detrimental application before you. As you know, this is not my first time coming before you. I have come to each meeting, listened to testimony on testimony, read the materials provided online, and asked questions of the applicant. Unfortunately, I was not given many clear answers. Mr. Brown has reminded us, meeting after meeting, how long this application has been going on. We would think if the application has been here that long, there would be no questions left, no pages unturned, and all issues would be resolved with complete transparency. However, I do not feel that that is the case. There are a few questions that I asked that I feel I was not given a clear answer. To name a few, I've asked them to reconcile their numbers as the number of parking spaces, the number of visitors, and the number of working employees did not add up. I was told the report must not have been updated, yet the reports were never changed. Let it be known that as the report stands now, the numbers do not account for clinic days and do not account for visitors. We were told visitors usually come in the afternoon. That's what the report says. But we heard from Dr. Joelle Winters, who said spouses will come all day long. Based on opposing testimony, it is possible the number of employees is also being underestimated as to not raise red flags about the parking. You just heard Danielle Curcio, who listed the unmanageable responsibilities for just one staff person. We also see that in their report it says that there is only 1 to 2 overnight RNs for 105 beds, less than 10 employees overnight for 105 beds. Does this sound right? I've asked about the traffic effects. Mr. Simoff, their engineer, submitted a memo relying on a traffic study that was done with 2 days only. 2 days out of a 365-day year, which was also done in 2018, over 4 years ago. A whole pandemic has come and gone, yet those numbers are what we are still relying on. I've asked what aspects will be open to the public. One person testified that it will not be limited to residents because they would like to make a, quote, greater impact. Another person said it would not be open to the public, but then in the same testimony said assessments will be open to the public. We were originally told trainings would be for everyone to come and learn about working with people with dementia. When I voiced my concerns about whether there would be enough parking and parking spaces to house these trainings, I was suddenly told that these trainings were meant to be virtual anyway. As you can see, this is quite confusing. Allow me to simplify. We are being told what we want to hear on that given night, even if it conflicts with prior meetings. More importantly, there has been an ignorance of overburdening our first responders. They've tried telling us they hire private ambulances, but after asking some questions, we've come to learn that private ambulances are basically only used to take patients to and from doctor's appointments. All emergencies will be on our first responders. Which leads me to my last point. After hearing Christopher Trishada speak at the last meeting, not only as a Holmdel resident, but as the chief of the Holmdel First Aid Squad, we know this town cannot support this facility. We do not need me to restate what he so clearly shared with us, but since it was over a month ago, some highlights that stuck out. 6 other facilities are in this town comprising of almost 1,000 beds. 12.5% of our call volume is to these current facilities, and that's expected to go up to possibly over 20% once those other facilities are up and running. Thank you, Chris, for giving us the transparency that these town residents deserve. As someone who wishes I never have to call for help and am grateful for the help we do receive, I don't want to be responsible for over-bombarding our first aid. And I will end with this. Against my neighbor's opinion, who thinks that they have been good neighbors, I disagree. The applicants should be ashamed of themselves for trying to push this through. It is evident that this town and this specific location cannot support this. The parking will not allow for these patients to have visitors, the first aid will be selfishly hindered, and the employees, who we know based on testimony that the majority of them in this field with similar roles rely on public transportation, do not have access to public transportation here. And the patients may not even be getting the proper support because they are not hiring enough people due to the lack of space. If they truly cared for their patients, as they say they do, they should withdraw their application. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak on this application?
Hi. Can you hear me? Elizabeth Urbanski, 121 Red Hill Road.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I'm just going to make one statement, which I think is really the essence of the problem here. If you approve this, then you are creating a dangerous legal precedent that it is okay to undermine the master plan of Holmdel, New Jersey. So next time a developer comes up here who wants variance changes, they have an argument that you have allowed other people, why aren't you allowing these? So I just want you to remember, this isn't that you are creating a legal precedent if you vote yes on this. And that's it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Banksy, just because it's a legal comment, for the record, every applicant stands on its own. One doesn't give precedent or any ability to influence another. Legally, what may happen otherwise, I can't comment.
Okay.
I just
But
want
we
to
all
be
know that's
clear.
not really the truth.
But
Thank
legally,
you.
that is the standard.
Okay.
Stanley Ong, 2 Country View Road.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Did you get his name?
I did.
Okay.
What was your address again? I'm sorry.
2 Country View Road.
Thanks.
I'll keep this short. After sitting through all the meetings in person, online, I still feel that I'm pretty comfortable to say that I support the UMC project. I've had from the beginning my own concerns regarding this project and how it would affect my street and this town. UMC has remediated some of my most pressing concerns as the process continued. They've increased the setback of the property line from 25 to 100 feet. They've altered the plans for the tree line at the back of the property for extra coverage all year round, and also agreed to place this tree line in place before the start of construction, which will lessen the impact on the most adjacent neighbors. Most importantly, they've provided clauses preventing the opening of Country View Road, ensuring my kids and my neighbors' kids can continue to have a safe place to play. You know, I've heard a lot of conjecture and opinion about how this development could be detrimental. I can't say that I've heard a lot of things said based on actual fact. Regarding the issues of sewer lines, it was confirmed that no sewer lines or pump stations would be placed or forced upon anyone's properties. Regarding traffic, there were a lot of concerns about the traffic impact of the area, but to my knowledge, no actual data had been submitted to challenge the study that was provided by UMC. Regarding the concerns of land use and zoning, the variance is tied to the specific land use, so the property zoning remains unchanged, allowing UMC the UMC variance doesn't magically change or convert the property to a commercial use in the future. I think I feel comfortable to say also that it's unfortunate that we can't have, Mr. Potter's personal petting zoo here forever. I do think, in lieu of that, UMC will continue to be a good neighbor, and it'll be good for Holmdel. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. We got who's else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Lance Loopy, Line Road. I'm going to keep this
I just missed your last name.
Loopy, L-U-P-I. I'm going to keep this simple. Oh, sorry.
That's right. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I think it's everyone's job on the dais to follow the master plan and do what's best for Holmdel, right? Things like someone wanted to put a portico 44 feet from the property line versus 50 feet. It's a simple variance. This is a lot. I don't think I'm not going to echo everything that a lot of people have said before, but this is too much. And, you guys, everyone up there is to do what's best for the town. And I don't think this is what's best for the town. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Eric?
Eric Silvergold, 9 Powderhorn Court.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but
Yes,
the
I
truth,
do. I think I'm going to jump in front of you. But yes, I do. Chairman, members of the board, I'm here tonight to support the Enclave project and recommend that the zoning board approve UMC's use variance application. So my family has lived in Country Woods for 22 years, and we're one of the few families that you'll hear from tonight who are actually directly impacted by this process and who can actually directly see the property. The property is about 225 feet from my property on the site formerly known as Potter's Farm. Now, it would be great if the Potter's property could be preserved as open space forever, but the Potters sold their property 3 years ago, and the farm ceased to exist at that time. So what remains today is a gardening business, some obsolete buildings, and an abandoned home. There are no historic structures, and the cute little petting farm will soon be moving away from Potter's Farm, the Potter's property, to Mr. Potter's new farm in Cream Ridge. So the farmer is long gone. There's no farm left to preserve, and there's no path to preserve the property. It's too small to qualify for county preservation funds. There's no willing seller for state Green Acres funding. And Holmdel certainly doesn't have the financial resources to acquire, preserve, and maintain the property. So unfortunately, the opportunity to preserve the farm has long passed us by. Now, if the application is denied, if it's denied and they're unable to successfully appeal, UMC will simply sell the property to another developer, and we'd likely see high-density housing built on the site. In fact, a prior developer was working on just such a high-density plan for the Potter's property with about 100 units. A developer, as you've heard, could build a church, a school, or a municipal complex without even needing a use variance. But instead, we find ourselves today with the United Methodist Communities as our potential neighbor. And I personally believe that UMC will be a good neighbor and that the Enclave facility will be a positive for Holmdel and for our community. So UMC's proposed facility was designed by Perkins Eastman, who's one of the most respected architectural firms in the country. I'd encourage people to Google them and look at their portfolio. The site will appear residential with mostly single-story ranch-style housing, and there will be extensive landscaping and landscaping buffers protecting both Country Woods and Red Hill Road. UMC will be an active owner-operator, and it's in their best interest to diligently maintain the property. As a future immediate neighbor, I have no personal concerns about noise levels, which will likely decrease due to the landscaping buffers, or traffic, which would just wind up being similar to when Potter's business was operational anyway. So UMC, as somebody had just mentioned, has been very, very responsive to the adjacent homeowners. And during their testimony, they've agreed to 4 things to mitigate our concerns. So first, as you've heard me say for a long time, a deed restriction preventing access to the facility from Country Woods via Country View Road. Second, an enhanced landscaping buffer. Third, an agreement to permanently maintain that landscaping buffer enforced by a landscape easement. And lastly, an agreement to plant the landscaping buffer prior to construction. Now, if the zoning board requires these 4 concessions as conditions of approval, I believe that any detrimental impact to nearby homeowners would be adequately mitigated. Now, I just want to step back and finish up with this thought and just think about what this is really all about. So dementia patients are what this is all about, and dementia patients are people. They deserve respect, they deserve dignity, and they deserve normalcy. But they also deserve the opportunity to live in the wonderful community of Holmdel just like we all do. Now, that's why New Jersey's land use laws encourage the construction of senior citizen community housing, and why New Jersey courts have held that senior care facilities are, and I'm quoting, beyond debate an inherently beneficial use that promotes the general welfare. So Holmdel should be proud to welcome a world-class, first-of-its-kind dementia facility into our community, and I urge the zoning board to do the right thing, follow the law, and approve UMC's use variance application. Thank you for all your time and for your volunteer work throughout this long and winding process.
Thank you.
Nicholas Pontecorvo, 6 Country View Road.
Just want to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so yeah.
I do. In case there's any questions, it's directly one of the 3 properties directly adjacent to the UMC. Tonight I'm here to speak in support of the Enclave development and the specific conditions of approval that Eric just covered. While in America everyone's entitled to an opinion and blessed with the protection of free speech to use it, in this scenario there are 3 houses in 1 block that are far and away most affected by what happens to Potter's Farm, and I feel our opinion should be heard the loudest and taken the most serious. I support the Enclave because I believe it's a great cause that's inherently beneficial to the overall community of Holmdel. I appreciate how the UMC has bent over backwards to not only cater to the request of the zoning board, but also went out of their way to hear and address the concerns of me and the people most disproportionately affected by this development, my neighbors, including my neighbor at 7 Country View Road and 10 Powderhorn Court, who are the other adjacent property owners who have also spoken out in support of this. In addition, they have also not spoken out against this, as some other people have. Neighbors and townspeople have spoken out against the UMC, have pointed to issues such as safety, traffic, noise, aesthetics, and negative effects on property values as a reason to block this project. Ironically, the people voicing these concerns are significantly less impacted by all of those things due to the fact that they don't actually even live near the project. When I wake up and walk out my door every morning, I look at Potter's Farm, or what used to be Potter's Farm. I will be looking at what will be there next for the next 30 to 40 years if I last that long. My concerns are for the safety of my children and my neighbors' children and the quality of life I thought I was getting when I purchased my house a few years ago. Currently, I count 10 houses on our block with 14 children living in them, almost all under the age of 11 years old. By allowing the UMC to move forward, we can guarantee that Country View never gets opened up and becomes a shortcut to the Parkway. We can guarantee the safety of those children, guarantee that Country Woods will remain an 89-house cul-de-sac and tree-lined neighborhood we all thought we were moving into when we bought our houses. We will not need to stress and worry about what happens to the farm next and what will be bolted or could be bolted onto our current neighborhood and all the unknown side effects that would result from this. This long, excruciating process of coming to these meetings and listening to this testimony will be over. So will the unknown of what could go next. If one of those 14 kids or their friends from our neighborhood were to get hit by a car doing 40 miles an hour, cutting through our development to get to the Parkway, would people be safer? What about if a large condo complex were built with 25-foot setbacks, sparse landscaping buffers, and hundreds of new neighbors from all walks of life coming and going? Would that up our property values, limit noise, maintain privacy that makes Country Woods unique and desirable? And honestly, the people that live three-quarters of a mile back on Galloping Circle, or over a mile or more away on Williams Way or Lucarelli Court, would they lose any sleep if this were to fail and one of those other outcomes were to come through? I think we know what the answer is there. This is not a question of Potter's Farm or the UMC Enclave. That ship had sailed when the sale was finalized. This is a decision between an owner-operator with a proven track record coming in and building a world-class facility that immediately addresses a growing need in our community. They have gone out of their way to be good neighbors, and it's in their best interest to continue this approach. Are we willing to roll the dice that the next person that stands before us for an application is going to be a 10 out of 10 and check every box and everyone? I manage risk for a living. I know that there's no perfect outcome without an almost equal measure of risk. I'm not willing to take that chance. People are, because they don't have to deal with the risk or the downfall if something else were to come in here that's less desirable. I do, and so do the two other properties that are adjacent to this, and so do the other people on Country View, Powderhorn, and Highwood. That's why our opinions should matter most, and that's one of the reasons why I feel you should take into consideration, strongly, our support for this. Really? That's pretty much all I have to say about this. I've been here coming to this project for these meetings for over a year and a half. I've missed my daughter's birthday party. I've missed sporting events, and I've actually listened to all the testimony and the facts and did not come up here and waste people's time with inaccurate statements about drainage and every other traffic issue that can be made up. This project will have as minimal effect as humanly possible for a property that doesn't have any other options other than to be developed. And I ask that you do the right thing, listen to the neighbors that are most affected, and please approve this project. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate all your efforts and for listening to me.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other folks who would like to make a comment on this? Someone, are you coming up?
Roberta Kaufman, 13 Chestnut Ridge Road.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just want to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so figure out.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
You know, we're talking about the most affected people on this, by this, and we're talking about the neighbors, and I should suggest that the gentleman who just spoke, any of his other scenarios would also have to, high-density housing, cut through to the Parkway, all of those terrible outcomes would also have to come in front of the zoning board. This area is zoned under R40B for 7 houses similar to the ones that they live in, cluster zoning, 7 houses compared to 15 buildings that are twice the footprint of the 7 houses. Clustered houses, unfortunately, would require the road next to their house to service that, but that would be it. It would have far less impact. When I chaired the HEC back in 2002, so I went down and saw a lady named Mrs. Rhodes who lived on Palmer Avenue. I met with Mr. Tetro. I also met with people on Agostino Drive and Fox Chase, all of whom had significant flooding problems. I'm talking 2002. Mr. Tetro was swamped even then, and of course he's repeatedly come before the Environmental Commission complaining of terrible water problems, surrounded by water. But I saw photographs from the guys on the south side of Agostino Drive that showed water coming up in the 3-4 feet into their kitchen. Not in, but just right to the kitchen door. So we know we have a problem. We know we have massive water coming out of the unmaintained detention basins of the woods, causing flooding and mud in the deciduous forested wetlands. I know that these things sound trivial to people who live up the hill, but the town, as we know, is spending $350,000 just to study these kind of problems. We know that we have more and more intense storm situations. We know that we're not living in the world of 2002 anymore. And though I do want to recall you that the 1958 master plan, because we have a long history here in Holmdel of maintaining rural character and keeping the environment as best we can. And back in 1958, this area also was still zoned rural residential. This is planning area 5. It is under the state plan. It is the most sensitive land in the state. Much of southern Holmdel's in that same category. Holmdel is not ignoring its responsibility, as you've heard, I'm sure, to the seniors. I may end up in a dementia center, who knows how soon. But we have zoned for this kind of function on Route 35, where we have the infrastructure, and this is not the place to put it. With this mountain, this design, which takes 2/3 of the acreage at the top of the hill, levels it so that we can have a flat surface to work on, is going to seriously degrade the whole basic flow of water, natural flow of water, the infiltration of the rain, the infiltration of the stormwater, because we're going to have machinery compacting and filling 12.5 of the 18.5 acres, using massive trucks, cutting and filling 22 or so thousand cubic yards of soil. This is really a significant degradation of a watershed that is a real problem to our town. And the bottom of the watershed, not the people at the top of the hill, are really suffering now, and they will continue to suffer as we have more and more storms. When I first worked on the open space plan for the town in 1999, and we had a document and put all this together, I received a phone call from Rosemary Peters. She was mayor of Middletown. And she said to me, I understand you're putting the plan together for Holmdel. We've got Tatum Park there. We're going to preserve the farm on White Road. Please try and maintain the rural character of Holmdel, so when people come, and Middletown, when people come off exit 114, they will see the kind of rural character this area has and what is. So I ask you to consider the fact that these people are asking for a variance. You are under no obligation to grant it. Normal zoning for this is reasonable. 7 houses in a cluster situation, or 6 houses unclustered on that property. It would be a beautiful place to build houses. It'll have far less impact on downstream. It'll have far less impact on the land. And I strongly urge you to vote against approval. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Who else, anyone else would like to speak on this application? What? She's also,
Derek Doherty, 141 Markshire Drive, Middletown.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
As a member of the Middletown Township Fire Department, a volunteer for 25 years, and as the pastor of the Middletown United Methodist Church, I speak before you this evening. The United Methodist communities are very good neighbors. I have had the honor of partnering with them in other communities that I have had the privilege of serving in, and I've also had the honor of volunteering in their facilities. They are good neighbors. They take very good care of their residents. Holmdel will be privileged to have United Methodist Communities build this facility here in this corner of Monmouth County. Thank you.
thank you for the comment. Okay. Anyone else? Hands are coming up very, very slowly, one at a time. No, the attorneys have had their shot, and that's separate.
We should just close the public comment.
Okay, let me just give it one more minute unless somebody else has. Any other member of the public would like to say something? Yeah, okay, please come forward.
My name is Michelle Dixie, 5 Field Gate Court in Hometown.
Did you catch it?
Michelle Dixie, 5 Field Gate Court.
Okay. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
I've been to several of these meetings now, and the very first meeting that I came to, the couple before was requesting a variance to put a 10-foot stanchion, an extension from 6 feet to 10 feet to get into their driveway on McCampbell Road. That was denied because it was going to change the character of the neighborhood and of Holmdel. I want you to just all consider the character of Holmdel as you're considering whether or not to give this variance. We all care about dementia people. I'm sure that the United Methodist Church is a great community, but they can still do this down on Route 35 where it's zoned. When we first heard from them, we thought that the project had to be on such an expansive 18-acre lot, and now we find out that the facility that this is modeled after is on a 5-acre lot. Holmdel has already zoned for this. I want you to, when you're considering this, also consider the character of our neighborhood when you're thinking of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, just last couple of tries. Anyone else would like to make a comment on this application? Please raise your hand and come up to the microphone. No one else would like to speak? We'll close the public hearing on this application. Thank you for the comments that you've provided to us. And at this point, I think that's where,
Ralph, I just have one thing for Bob.
yeah?
I think I had asked in the meeting that I really wanted to understand exactly what housing could be built on the lot. A lot of public comments were about what would be able to be here if this wasn't here, and how many single-family houses could be built in what size. Do you think I could get an answer to that question from you at the next meeting?
Certainly, we can look into that and give you some details.
With that, we'll close for tonight, and we will continue this. We need to give a date certain.
We're just going to continue with summations of council, and then professional board member discussion vote.
And
There'll be no
also
more public-
summation from you as to.
It'll be part of our discussion.
Right, you've kept notes throughout and to enumerate all the conditions that have been agreed to that need to be part of the resolution.
If it's a positive.
Yeah, so that we're all familiar with exactly what's been agreed to.
Could I ask one thing?
Sure, Gene?
Bob
CELU made some, hold it down. CELU made some comments about the storm drainage situation. Now, that is different than what we have in the information that was provided by the applicant. Is there any possibility that anybody could look at that and say if is that how does that compare? What's right? What's wrong? Can we make any comments about that?
So Gene, if I can cut you off, but not to step on Bob's toes, that should be part of the board's discussion with the board professionals, which we've already stated should really be at the next meeting. If we start getting into discussion now.
No, I'm not
Yeah,
asking for it now.
Okay.
I'm asking for it.
I just want to make sure we're not going to violate what we said to the public we were going to do. So people may have left and they don't hear us.
Yeah, Marty, I think we're just trying to let our professionals know what we're looking for.
No, it's good. I like
I
it.
mean-
I just, in case somebody left and they thought we would.
Bob has previously reviewed and confirmed their applicant's detailed stormwater calculations and the summaries that were in it, and he can go over the summary if you would like.
Well, I think CELU has made, I think to Gene's point, CELU has raised some issues in the statement we just got this week, and that was read today. And I think Gene's right, it would be nice to hear our professionals comment on the issues that CELU raised. So
Fine.
to hear what CELU had to say, and whether Bob thinks, as they raised some pretty serious concerns, if they're true, about stormwater management. So let's hear from
Right.
our professionals and get their thoughts.
Yeah, and then I will ask Marty that a number of comments have been made also about issues that are outside the scope of what this board can consider. And Marty, to potentially summarize some of those things, such as off-site services that are off-site, other township responsibilities, things like that, that are outside the scope of what we can address.
Absolutely.
I think most of our board members know what we can and can't.
Yeah, well, I think it helps to get a summary of that.
It'll all be part of that discussion.
Okay, now, the next question in this regard is with regard to a date. Since we need to continue that, what we are doing is we're stopping the hearing for tonight, and we will continue the public hearing, and we need to give a date certain because of the notice requirements. Yeah, Loretta gave us a calendar of the upcoming meetings. Where did I put that? Somewhere underneath here. Yeah, got it, okay. Next meeting's October 5th, and that's got a full agenda, and we'll discuss that separately. October 19th is the following meeting, and I understand, Sandy, you or your people are not available that evening.
No, we are definitely available on the 19th.
Okay, so is that then, oh, it's note to meet, not note to mention. I misread that. So is October the 19th the appropriate continued date for discussion and summary from the professionals for this? Is everyone okay with that?
I'm the only one that's, I saw on the agenda. I will be away on vacation that week.
Let's make sure we have 7.
Yeah.
And we don't know about the other 3 that are not here right now.
Did you check with them about, they'll be back?
But they're available to be at the 19th. So I'm the only one.
Yes.
And the 5th is also the end of a religious holiday, so yeah.
Okay, so is everyone agreed? Then we will continue this public hearing on this application on Wednesday, October 19th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Good. Without any further notice to the public about that. Okay. Thank you. I'll give it. Yeah, yeah.
For the 5th of October, I haven't decided how that's impacting. It's not true that over 6:30 people who celebrate that holiday are in fact in temple. They're not done by 6:30.
And then they celebrate.
And and then generally are breaking their fast. So that's really unfair to hold a meeting on that night. It puts people in a position where they have to choose. It happens to be the holiest day of the year in the Jewish religion. And we wouldn't be doing that on Christmas Eve or any other holy day. So I don't think we should be holding a meeting on October 2nd.
Now, you have scheduled 4 other applications. Have they been given notice on this yet? They have all sent the notices, because that's just 2 weeks off. So did any of them have a problem with that? None of and it didn't come up. And this date was on our calendar from January. Do any of the board members have a problem with that? October the 5th.
We could always also have a skeleton board just to accept jurisdiction if we had to, if anybody needed an adjournment or wanted to be here.
May have a problem.
Right, no,
I don't think we
yeah.
should have a meeting on that date.
But even, and I'm not disagreeing with that, but since they've already noticed it, my 2 cents would be maybe we have a skeleton board to at least accept jurisdiction and to carry so they don't have to renotice, or it's not their fault that they've noticed for a date that we wouldn't have.
I'll be available to be here if you need one.
You know, I mean, not my decision, but
No,
I don't disagree with Valerie's comment
She's
about
right.
the public. The applicants may not have cared, but
It's disrespectful
Yeah.
to have a meeting that night.
Well, I mean, I think it was listed since January, we'll be.
Well,
We should have looked at it better.
We didn't see it. I didn't examine the calendar when we looked at all the dates, so I didn't notice, like I didn't compare it, so I didn't date to see it. But I obviously see it now, and I don't think it's appropriate, so.
Well, let's see, four is a quorum?
no, yeah,
If four is a
we just
quorum-
need 4 to open, have a quorum to open and carry, if you're gonna do that.
I'm willing to be here.
You shouldn't have booked the
Jason.
19th into the
Yeah,
Manchester.
I hear Valerie. I mean, if I need to be here, I could be here, but I do respect Valerie's opinion. It's a Jewish holiday. I think, the public should also have the opportunity to be here. I can be here if needed, I can be here on October 5th, but I do hear Valerie's point, that it's a valid point.
Yeah, because the thing is, unfortunately, the notice has already gone out, and those applicants have been told. We need to be fair to them, because it would significant additional expense if they have to
So let's
renotice.
find out who's going to be here, and then let's move on.
How about you, Dimitri?
I'm here.
You're here, I'm here, that's 4. Valerie, you're not. Gorf, you're here, okay, and the 3 people who aren't here, we don't know. Loretta, could you communicate with them and share with them what the consensus is? Is that seems to be to at least open the meeting and then defer all the applications to another date unless any one of those applicants has. I mean, some of those are more minor than others. We'll have to, you'll have to talk to them and see what you can do.
But I think probably as a courtesy, let them know they don't even have to be here. We'll carry it without their presence. As long as you have a date with them, we're going to need to carry it to a date certain. So maybe you can talk to them about dates that will work for them, and then we can carry without them having to be here.
We only have 3 days left after.
I mean, that's not going to take the whole meeting either, so you could do 1 or 2, probably, I would say that. Yeah.
1 or 2, yeah. Okay. Moving on then to item 3. Item 3, in the memorializing resolutions. 4 Overlook Drive, Christian and Veronica Kraus, Block 50.02, Lot 2 in the R40A zone, ZB variance number 452. Applicant seeks setback variance relief for a 9 by 12 pool pavilion 2 feet from the property line where 25 feet is required. Marty has drafted a resolution and submitted to us for our review. Does anyone have any comments on the draft resolution? I looked it over, it looks okay to me. The Kraus application.
Yeah, both resolutions were submitted to the professionals. A couple minor comments, and what we have should be the final version. There's no conditions on either, or no special conditions.
Anything.
They're straightforward.
So is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second. A roll call? Yes.
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 Okay, item 4.
Item number 4 Sharon Lane, Vincent Geranio, Block 15.01, Lot 2 in the R40A zone, ZB variance number 463. Applicant seeks relief to construct a new portico located 44.58 feet from the front property line where 50 feet is required.
Again, we have a draft from Marty of this. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the draft resolution? I didn't see any.
I make a motion we approve.
A motion to approve. Is there a second? Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Okay, we can, but I'd like to make one comment. I looked through it today. We always postpone looking at these things.
Revised with all of our recommendations too?
We haven't discussed it, that's why I want to just, I did have some comments.
We need all the recommendations on this.
The only recommendation is on here, the one that came from you with regard to pools. If any, in short, I think we'll table it for tonight, but everyone, please look at it. If you have any comments, and I know I have a few, please get them to Loretta so she can revise this. If anyone has added recommendations, please get them to Loretta so she can revise it and we can consider it at a subsequent meeting.
So for the purpose of the new people, can you explain to them what happens with this and where does it go? So they will
Okay,
understand.
this is a required annual report.
You may not be picking this up.
You got it.
Yeah.
I'll tell them that.
Okay, but this annual report, which is a draft that Loretta put together, is required by the MLUL that we issue a report to the Township Committee each year. It summarizes what we did in the past year and also gives an opportunity for us to suggest from our experience in looking at different applications, if we find that there is any commonality, and I'll pick up a couple from the prior year, that the ordinances regarding setbacks for sheds did not discriminate between different lot sizes. So on a small lot, the setback requirement for shed was the same as on a large lot. So one suggestion that was made for a couple of times, but then in fact last year it did get picked up, was to incorporate that and to modify the zoning requirements to reflect that.
We heard one tonight from Kip saying that our checklist may not have all the right things on it in today's DEP world, so possibly one thing is to update it. That may be more from the professionals, but we've heard it, so it's possible we should update.
Can we put checklist items in here?
Sure, yes, it's a zoning ordinance.
All right, so I have an
Here we go.
point to add on.
Not tonight.
Okay.
No, I think that's an important part of the whole application process. And
Right.
like the chairman just said, we did, sometimes it takes a little while, but we made several zoning changes this year based on, the prior year's reports, recommendations from the Department of Community Development, and just things that we've seen, including that the shed change, things with, like, for example, lighting on site plans, because it was coming up as a variance and before this board and the planning board constantly. So, just really updating the standards to better reflect.
So that, in the LOI case, the LOI covers certain of the wetland things, but there are other documents that cover other aspects of it, like the flood area is covered by a different part of the DEP under a different ordinance. So that's we should become a different checklist item because it impacts his site plans.
Can I make a suggestion to Loretta? Give us a copy of you have two current checklists, right? One for commercial and one for backyard variances. Send it to us so we can look at it, because there's a number of things that we could definitely improve on our checklist. I'm sure the professionals will agree. Okay, and one of the things that comes to my mind is that the first aid squad is not on the checklist to make suggestions. The fire marshal is, but not first aid, and I want to include that for the
I don't know if
future.
that's so much a checklist
Yes,
as
it
it's
is.
a procedural thing.
Yeah, it's a checklist. Just like they have fire marshal must okay, traffic cop has to okay.
I think that's a procedural thing. I don't think that's on the checklist.
No, it is.
Well, we'll take a look at it.
Send out the checklist to everybody, Loretta, so we can look at it.
But in furtherance of that, we've had a lot of elevator size issues.
Yeah.
Just maybe building code. but
There's
they
other
become-
things too, so maybe even Steve should give input if we're going to talk about checklists.
And he
We don't want
has.
to get into things that are other people's jurisdiction.
Right, well, Steve would be a good person to include in this, Loretta.
Okay, so we'll table this for now, but everybody take a look at it and get your comments to Loretta.
No, we have the annual report. Was it sent to us electronically?
Yeah.
Yes, it was sent electronically.
Maybe we should send it out again. We're along with the checklist. Can you send it out again to us, please?
Okay,
August 19th.
that's item 5. Item 6 is we have 2 draft minutes from Loretta. First, I'll take them separately because the attendance was slightly different. Was minutes of May 18th, on which Valerie was absent. So did anybody have any comments on the minutes for May 18th? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The next one is June 1st. And I have a comment on that one. On page 2 is the continued public hearing on the Dementia Center, and said the item was not heard and be carried to a date certain. I believe we did have a date certain, and that date should be included here. Because we didn't require them to renotice.
Was that the special meeting, June 19th? June 29th, sorry, June 29th.
This was June 9th, June 1st.
We gave the special meeting June 29th to that? Is that what it was?
I think so, but Loretta, you have the records and can verify what the correct date is. If any other corrections for the June 1st minutes? If none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Professional reports. Start with Marty. Do you have anything new?
No.
Kate?
Nothing from me.
No report tonight, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any other business for this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I've never
Aye.
heard about that motion going down. Thank you.
8:41's not bad.
Correct. I mean, I was
Loretta said 10:30.
I was expecting far more
Close the
expansive
tapes.
public comments and more
Loretta,
people.
close the tapes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Loretta, is there something for the last application on the fifth, the one on Winsburg? We're not matching.